everyone. Welcome to Adometry's webinar number 2 in the webinar series, A Playbook for Winning Marketing Performance Measurement Gain. Today we're going to talk about building a data foundation for marketing performance management. A couple housekeeping notes. The session is being recorded. Everyone is on mute. If you have any questions, please go ahead and enter them in the question box in the GoToWebinar, and we'll address as many of those as we can at the end. If there's some questions we don't get to, we'll follow up with answers to those questions via blog posts. Additionally, the slides from today's presentation, as well as the recording, will be posted. The slides will be on SlideShare, and we'll put the recording on a website. So everyone attending will get an email linking to those resources within the next couple of days. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. My name is Casey Carey. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at Adometry, and I've spent about the last 15 years pursuing a passionate mission around helping marketers do better marketing, whether that's through data, technology, or services, and working in companies such as DoubleClick, Epsilon, WebTrends, and now Adometry. So super excited to share this information with you, and appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to join us for this webinar. First, a word from our sponsor. Adometry, what do? We power more intelligent marketing. In very simple terms, we provide advanced marketing attribution optimization solutions. We do that for over 75 brands and their agency partners, primarily Fortune 2000 companies in the auto, telecom, technology, travel, leisure, financial services, and retail verticals. When I first conceived this webinar series, it was really around answering a question that we hear a lot from prospects and customers, and that is, what are really the key steps that I need to think about, consider, and take on to build out an advanced attribution solution. The previous webinar, which we held before the holidays, we talked quite a bit about setting the direction. So what's your strategy? What's the business case? What are the things you should consider? How you should assess kind of your current situation, and then define the goals that you hope to achieve with an attribution initiative. And all those resources are available on our website if you missed that webinar. Today we're going to talk about trust, and I specifically use the term trust, but at the end of the day what we're talking about is building a data foundation for your attribution initiative. Coming up later this month and into February, we'll have additional webinars around clarity and insights, taking action on the information, and then we'll share some specific case studies, success stories, and results from our customers. So let's dive into today's content. Like I said, really focusing on this concept of trust. And it comes out of conversations with customers, and it goes something like this. We hired you guys to show us a radically different view of our marketing performance. And so we come in and we work with them, and we put everything in place, and they see a radically different view of their marketing performance. And for those of you who kind of live in the marketing analytics, measure community, you know the next thing that happens when you show something that is different than the status quo, everybody starts questioning the validity, quality, and appropriateness of the data that was used to show those insights. So a big part of a successful attribution initiative is actually creating a data foundation that gives you trust in that data. If you're actually going to make strategic or tactical decisions within your marketing organization around those insights, you have to have confidence that the data those insights is based on is as accurate and as valid as it can be. So we'll talk about today kind of 3 things. One is mapping your solution, really looking at what are the sources of data and what you need to accomplish with those. We'll do a dive down into each of the data sources and the attributes you want to consider bringing together. And then finally, we'll talk about kind of how this all comes together into an attribution solution, and we'll wrap up with Q&A. So first, mapping your solution design. I'm always an advocate of kind of taking a step back and making sure you have clarity on your goals before you start. So one of the advantages of putting in place a comprehensive attribution solution is creating consistent KPIs across all your marketing channels. So really answering that question, what are the key KPIs that I want to have in place so I can get an apples to apples comparison of performance? What channels do I want to include? And this could be a phased approach. Initial phase, these are the big channels that are moving my business, so let's get those in here. These channels are going to be harder. So what's the phase approach, and what does that look like? And then ultimately, what level of insight do I want? So you can start at a very high level, just give me channel performance, or you actually want to drill down further into how are campaigns performing, specific creatives, sub-channels, keywords, etc. A little Thursday measure humor. Love Dogbert. If you need a dashboard application to track your key metrics, that way you'll be able to have more data to ignore when you make decisions based on company politics. I think we've all lived that, understand how that works. But I love the third frame, which is, will the data be accurate? Okay, let's pretend like that matters. It's back to the accuracy, the validation, the quality, and completeness of the data that we bring to bear as part of this decision. We all know as measure professionals, it's never perfect. My catchphrase is, this is marketing analytics, it's not accounting. And so we know there's gaps, we know there's challenges, but we have to be okay with knowing that the more information we have, the better the quality, the better our decisions. It's never going to be perfect. It's a bit of a journey rather than a specific destination. So let's talk about KPIs. I think one of the biggest benefits of putting in place an attribution solution is being able to get that apples to apples comparison across my channels. And so in previous lives, I've had situations where each channel was using a different metric to measure performance. Search was looking at return on ad spend. Email was probably doing an ROI. My affiliate channels was looking at cost per customer, cost per acquisition, social, who knew. So it's hard to look across each of those channels and basically say, this channel works better than that channel. I should invest some more money here. So really think about creating that touchstone metric or metrics that you're looking to measure performance across the channels. Some companies are fine with doing a sales to cost ratio. There's nothing wrong with that. And it's pretty simple to do. So that's one approach. Others will be more activity-based, so looking at cost per action and whether that action is a hard conversion or a soft conversion. It helps kind of normalize the impression and click metrics across the channels. I would advocate, obviously, a more value-based metric, return on marketing investment, so bringing in the actual value of the conversion events and full cost on the channels. And really, if you're a retailer, they typically use something like contribution. So really getting to that level of understanding the value that each channel is driving and the marketing tactics within it. So it's kind of the first step as part of your vision. What are those key measures that we want to be able to put in place as part of this overall solution? As we're mapping our attribution ecosystem, first we want to consider the channels that we're looking to track and want to bring into the equation. So obviously we have tons of options around paid media, kind of the typical suspects of display and video, social ads, etc. Bringing in shopping engines, affiliates, email, could include SMS, and even looking offline and possibly bringing in direct mail, catalog or inserts as part of that overall equation. Bringing in owned media, particularly organic search, direct nav, any organic social. One of the interesting concepts that I see evolving in a couple of our customers and conversations with people in the industry is this notion of thinking of content as a channel. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but looking at things such as a mortgage calculator or a product configurator or other types of rich content that may exist on an owned property is actually an ad event that influences the customer journey. And even something such as chat could be considered as part of that. So it doesn't necessarily have to be media that you're pushing out to third parties. It could actually be ad events or engagement types of content that are on your own sites themselves. All this media is consumed through devices. So today, obviously, it's a much more complex environment with the rapid adoption of mobile. I've seen various stats showing kind of the impact of mobile on the customer journey. One's as high as 5.7 devices average per user. I only have 3 or 4, but 5.7 seems high, but we know it's more than one, and it's definitely having an impact on how we track and measure media throughout that journey. Ultimately, we're interested in catching the transactions and sales channels. So that, for most of us, it's websites, but it could also include call center conversions, kiosks, or other brick and mortars, such as a branch, a dealership, a retail point of sale, et cetera. And then we want to know which products and services were actually associated with those conversion events. So merchandise, applications, subscriptions, reservations, what are the product attributes that we want to bring to bear. And then finally, taking a look at the audience and CRM data. So really answering the question of who it is and what do I know about them, and bringing that all together. So typically, companies that take on an attribution initiative would put together, obviously, a much more detailed map than this, but this is the key components that would go into that framework to start defining all the pieces that they want to bring together as part of this solution. So let's talk about each of the data sources and the specific attributes of each of those. Really broken it into 4 primary buckets. So we'll talk about marketing events, and we'll do a little bit deep dive on each of those. We'll talk about the conversion events, ultimately what was the result, cost and context data. So if we want to move past activities such as clicks and really kind of understand the true value of our marketing activities, we need to bring cost and context into it. And then ultimately looking at how we bring in CRM and audience data. So on marketing event data, let's talk a little bit about kind of how we can look at some of these sources. One is mapping each of the channels that we want to track as being impression-based, click-based, or both. Something such as email, I could actually treat as both an impression, that is opens, or clicks, the clicks that occurred within it. Definitely on video, display, social ads, etc. I want to bring in the impression component into the equation. Obviously, impressions are a much more meaningful measure for top of the funnel, mid funnel types of media, such as display. As part of an overall solution, bringing both impressions and clicks. As I mentioned earlier, I think there's maybe an emerging third type of marketing event, if you will, and I'll call it engagement, and kind of mapping that to some of the content channels. It's not necessarily a click. It could be treated as an impression, but it's actually they engage with some content or an activity or something. So something to kind of think about for future planning. I'll talk more about direct mail, but really treating direct mail, catalogs, package inserts, things such as that as impressions. A lot of discussion and complexity goes into how we actually collect the data. So depending on the channels that you're looking to track, your actual ecosystem of the platforms and technologies that you use for your marketing, and kind of the capabilities and sophistication that you want to put into the solution, you have a lot of options around data collection. Wouldn't say that any one method or approach is the answer. It's actually a toolbox approach, and really being able to take advantage of each of the data sources and how I can get to that data. So obviously, ad server log files have kind of been the historic manner in which at least impression and display data have been brought into these solutions. But now ad tags, including viewability defined, at least by the IAB, as 50% of the pixels viewable for at least a second. Is really kind of bringing to the forefront much better data about display video impressions and their role in the overall attribution equation. A lot of the more modern platforms that you're using for marketing have APIs or other mechanisms to get data, whether it's your search platforms such as Marin or Kinshu, or your affiliate platform or others. So definitely sources of data there. You'll be using page tags to capture referring URL parameters, and so you want to pull out ad IDs, content source, those types of things out of those parameters. URL redirects is a mechanism you can use, pixeling some of your media, emails, etc. And then you may even have some custom feeds where you're actually pulling this data in. First and foremost, attribution is a data management problem. And this is where a lot of the technology and the hard work goes into play. We tend to talk a lot about attribution methodologies, last click, time decay, data-driven, algorithmic, but ultimately it's this data foundation and the technologies in place to capture that data that makes attribution work. So I'll talk a little bit more about direct mail. A lot of our clients still use direct mail as an important part of their marketing. I was looking the other day, stats, there's still $50 billion being spent on advertising mail in the US. And still for financial services, multi-channel retailers, telecom, cable, direct mail is still a big part of their overall marketing mix. So we partnered with companies such as Axiom, Datalogix, LiveRamp, and these guys have built anonymous cookie pools that are mapped to PII, email, postal addresses, and then we sync our tracking cookies with them. So basically what that means is if I get a direct mail file that has in it name and address and home date, maybe some segmentation codes, I can then send that over to LiveRamp. They'll do a match of the PII and send us back the cookies that were actually exposed through that direct mail effort. Typical match rates run 20 to 40% at this point. I'm sure they'll continue to get better over time. And this will become more robust, but definitely directional, statistically directional, in adding and having a better understanding as to how direct mail fits into an overall attribution solution. The other aspect that's emerging and is a hot topic right now is this idea of moving from device attribution to user level attribution. The dirty little secret is that most attribution that's being done today is device level attribution, and it is based primarily on third-party cookies. Obviously the explosion of the mobile platforms and over time things such as addressable TV, the cookie will not be the only way in which devices and users are identified. So if you think about third-party cookies today, there's becoming bigger and bigger tracking challenges. Obviously, some of the mobile web browsers like Safari for iOS reject third-party cookies. A lot of the software programs, the antivirus programs are now sweeping third-party cookies. Some of the browsers make it pretty easy to block third-party cookies. We now have mobile apps, so we have ads and apps, and there's really no concept of a cookie as we know it within those apps. And then you really have the challenge of multiple device usage. So whether it's even just two laptops or a laptop and a smartphone, each of those devices is being cookied and seen as a separate user, if you will, when we ultimately know that they're multiple users. So really the approach to solve this problem is kind of threefold. One is device identification, so using multiple technologies to uniquely identify devices. So bringing in first-party cookies to get past some of the blocking and deletion issues, bringing in mobile device IDs, the ad IDs that are being implemented by Google and Apple, as well as starting to track other devices such as set-top box data, et cetera. So this will continue to proliferate. ultimately finding mechanisms to identify unique devices. Part of this is mobile ad tracking, so really, particularly in app, being able to get the data around both the device, but also what was the ad event that occurred on that device. And then ultimately building a device graph. So really looking across devices and associating devices at the user level. And really two mechanisms to do that. An explicit, which could be cross-device authentication, partner databases, other companies that are building device graphs based on what they know, companies such as, obviously Google's doing it with its single sign-on across Chrome. Facebook's doing it with connecting your Facebook app on your phone to your Facebook logins on your laptop, as well as inferred. So, observing behavior on devices and actually modeling that behavior and making predictions about common users based on that behavior. Ultimately, as this technology and these capabilities evolve, it gets us to user-level attribution, which as a marketer sounds much more interesting than device-level attribution, because that's ultimately what I care about. So really bringing mobile and mobile conversion and ad tracking into it, insights into the device role. So having that view into what is the role of a smartphone in the customer journey? Does it primarily act as a converter, or is it a promoter, or is it an introducer? More persistent, so just consistent tracking over time and ultimately more accurate results. So exciting stuff going on here. A lot of companies working on solving these problems. It's one of those, I think, where it's still fairly early stages, but definitely we've made a lot of progress here, and I think we'll continue to see it evolve over time. So let's talk about marketing events, kind of the key data elements that we're looking to capture for each event. So if you think about a marketing event, whether it's a display impression, it's an email, it's a click on a paid search, etc. We want to capture the specific data about that event to bring into the attribution solution. So ultimately, we need an ad ID. Each ad event's going to need a unique ID. We'll need that to connect cost and context data later to that specific event. Ideally, we're also capturing channel and sub-channel. So for example, if it's on search, we may be looking at brand terms, product category 1 term, product category 2 term as a sub-channel. Maybe an affiliate, I break out loyalty versus coupon. So really, putting 2 or 3 levels on the channels themselves to give me additional insights. The specific provider, so was it Google or Bing? Was it Retail Me Not or Coupon City, etc. What was the content and creative associated with that ad event? Could be what was the offer, what creative was associated with it, the campaign ID, so thematically, what's that content and creative associated with? Is it a back-to-school campaign? Is it a reactivation campaign? The time and data of the event, and then what was the event type? Was it an impression, click, or engagement? So let's now move on to the conversion event data. So we've identified kind of what we need to capture for each of the marketing events. Hopefully, with the marketing events, there's some associated conversion events. So let's take a look at those. Depending on your business, on your vertical, your conversion events are going to vary drastically. And depending on what you can capture, the value of that information, and how strong a proxy is it ultimately for the success of your marketing activities. So there's soft events, things like store locators and an email subscription, maybe a coupon download, configuring a product or something like that. Could move down the funnel to kind of more firm events. So maybe scheduled an appointment, filled out an application, did a request for information, asked for a quote on insurance or something like that. And then ultimately the hard events, specific purchase or reservation, activated an account, enrolled, started a policy. There's probably a long list of items that could ultimately fit underneath hard events. Some of the things to think about on conversion events is kind of where are the sources of that data, how do I get to that data, and do I have the elements available to help me kind of drive my attribution solution. So Obviously, websites are easy, confirmation, thank you pages, etc. We're all pretty good at that. Could be a mobile app, conversion event. Bringing in call center and in-person or POS data. So similarly, how we talked about bringing in direct mail as a channel, you can use similar techniques to bring in kind of offline data, if you will, using PII emails. I can also do things such as a confirmation email or first login or things like that to associate a specific customer with a tracking ID for the digital aspect. So multiple mechanisms there once you get off the web to bring in that conversion data. Conversion data is usually pretty simple. You need to know date and time of the conversion, the amount or the value. There's going to be times when there's no explicit value on the conversion event, so you'll want to associate a business value to it. Maybe a quote start is worth $150. So assigning those values to each of those events so that as I start doing value-based metrics within my attribution solution, I've got that return information that I can use. And then ultimately, I need to know the customer ID if I want to bring in first-party or CRM data so that I can associate that data within the attribution solution. Moving on to cost and reference data. So we've talked about the marketing events, the conversion events. So kind of drilling down on the marketing events themselves and understanding the costs associated with those investments, and then giving us the slices of the data to really understand what's working and what's not. So if we think about cost data specifically, a lot of marketers today basically think of cost as media cost. And that's a great place to start. But if you're looking for an apples-to-apples comparison, a lot of the marketing channels that you want to bring into your attribution solution don't have a media cost or have minimal media costs associated with it. Email would be a great example of that. But nonetheless, you've got your variable costs of bringing in media. You may have a flat cost associated with that, like a minimum spend or something like that. I would suggest considering bringing in some of the fixed costs, so platform costs, whether it's your email platform or if you're using an SEO platform like BrightEdge or Conductor, the costs associated with that. Possibly looking at campaign agency and internal headcount as part of your overall costs. So, if you really want to get that apples-to-apples comparison across channels, you kind of have to be equally loaded or burdened with costs to make that happen. So the challenge is some of those costs are hard to get to because they're not. The media cost is typically fairly easy. It's some of those ad hoc costs that are a little more challenging. So easy to get media cost out of your DSP, your ad server, your paid search platform. Pretty straightforward. Usually your affiliates, your shopping engines, your emails, not too bad. You may have to actually extrapolate that data. You kind of get your total email for the month, and you're going to have to allocate that cost to each email and each program. And then bringing in the ad hoc costs, so my tools and platform costs, allocating that over the period, any certain agency costs, internal headcount. And you may even at some point want to bring in gross margins into the revenue side so that you can actually start looking at contribution and real return on those conversion events. Context data is what we refer to as the data. It's additional attributes about your marketing events. And this is an interesting area where typically a lot of companies will say, yeah, we've got all that nailed, we've got it. Once they get into it, they usually don't. And so if you think about it in fairly simple terms, each of the channels has kind of attributes associated with it in terms of what are the providers or the sites or the placements, what's the creative associated with it, do I have a keyword, what was the specific offer. So really part of a kind of full boat attribution solution, if you will, is creating the management processes and approaches to consistently defining the attributes for each of your ad impressions. so that you can really start drilling down into, it's not just what's the performance of the channel, but what's the performance of this channel for this creative within this campaign, and how do I view that same creative and campaign in another channel. So really giving you those additional layers of analysis within and across channels on how each aspect of your marketing is working and performing on a fully attributed basis. A lot of this data exists in your marketing platforms, but some of the data is going to exist in Excel spreadsheets, match tables, things like that. That goes back to needing that marketing event ID so that you can basically bring in the attributes for each one of those IDs and overlay that as part of your reporting infrastructure. And then the final piece of the section is CRM and audience data. Pretty simply, a lot of companies want to bring in CRM data. So they may have segmentation on that data. They may have purchase history. They may have a lifetime value score. Are they part of a loyalty program, et cetera? So much like the marketing event data, those attributes, also bringing in the audience part and the first party. Additionally, bringing in kind of third-party data, so demographics, geographics, purchase intent, et cetera. We partner with a handful of companies like Datalogix, Newstar, Axiom, Vizio, Nielsen, BlueKai, to provide some of that third-party audience data. So it's it's an interesting additional view of your attribution performance to actually see how a channel, a specific campaign within a channel is performing against a particular audience segment compared to another audience segment. So it's definitely some very interesting opportunities to drive insights and some optimizations by having that data available. And a word a little bit about kind of data monitoring and building trust. It's a lot of complex data to bring together to build a sophisticated attribution solution. Getting all the plumbing put in place, making sure the data is all there. Things break. It's a pretty dynamic environment. Somebody may drop a tag. Somebody may forget to tag a creative. Somebody may change a platform and break something. So an important part of your attribution solution you should consider is building in ongoing data monitoring. So kind of back to that trust factor, being able to know that, yes, my conversion events are being captured and at their level I expect. My ad volumes match my advertising plan. My email volumes are what I'm seeing in my email platform, et cetera. So really kind of building that check and then having exception reporting in place. So that if something does break along on the way, you've got kind of an early warning signal and you can go get it repaired so that down the road you don't report attribution results and then find out that a big portion of your data was missing. So definitely something worth considering as part of your overall solution. So let's talk about bringing it all together. A couple slides here. One is just kind of very simple flow. This is a paid search display example, but I think it kind of drives home everything that we've talked about today. So in the upper left is a publisher website. It's being served by double-click on that particular ad. The user sees that ad. We're going to capture that impression through an ad tag, and then that data impression comes into your attribution platform. At some point down the road, they do a paid search on Google. They click on that, so they land on the site. We're going to capture that referring parameters and that click event through a page tag, and then during that session they go ahead and convert. So on the conversion pages, the thank you page, we'll have a conversion tag that actually brings in the conversion data, date, time, value of that conversion event. We're going to munge that data in with the context and cost data. So what other data do we know about that ad, that the impression? What do we know about that search event? And what other data do we know about that customer? What audience is he in? What products did he buy? What segment is he in? then any other additional data that we may have available to us to tell us about that customer. Maybe he also received a direct mail piece, so we want to bring that in as well. So kind of bringing all that data together. Some thoughts on tag management. Tag management helps solve some of this, quite a bit of it. So if you don't have a tag management solution in place, it's maybe something you want to look at as part of an attribution initiative. Some of the things, particularly that are advantageous with a tag solution, is some of them now offer server to server. So they're actually capturing at least the on-site data that your attribution solution needs, and you'll be able to pull that data without having your own tag fired. So there's some efficiencies that can occur there, partnering with a tag management solution. And then bringing it all together. So we'll talk more about this in the next session, but I just kind of wanted to make it real. So we've spent all this time putting this data collection in place, making sure we've got it all aligned, bring it all together, but then really looking at performance. So this is what we call a cross-channel report, and we're looking at 3 conversion events: an online secure app, a branch locator, and in-branch applications. So we're actually bringing branch conversion events into the attribution equation, and then the total of those conversions. And then looking at total attributed conversions. So of all those conversions, how many can we actually attribute to the marketing events that we have in the system? So we're using an algorithmic approach to determine the impact of each of those marketing events on that conversion event. How many of the events are multi-touch? So if you look at online secure applications, 66% of those attributed conversions had more than one marketing event as part of their path to purchase. And not just they had it, but it was actually of sufficient influence to be included. So it wasn't that maybe they saw an ad and that ad had no impact on the overall outcome. So attributed conversions is looking at the data that actually had a statistical impact on that ultimate conversion. And then the last piece, multi-channel conversions. So 21% of these conversions actually went across channels. So some of that 66% could have been multiple times within channels. The 21% is across channels. So just to give you a feel for ultimately how this data comes to bear and can be visualized. So key takeaways. Begin with the end in mind. Always a great way to start. Really balancing your goals, your data, and complexity. Based on your specific business needs, what it is you want to achieve, maybe phasing the approach, really understanding what it is you need, because people always say, well, what data should I bring in? And the answer to that question is, well, what do you want to do? And there's a give and take there. You may not be able to do everything you want to do because you don't have the data available. So there's a little bit of an iterative back and forth process to work through that as you do your solution design. Have a vision for the insights and how those are going to drive different activities. I'm a big fan of put the data to work. If you're not, it's just data. So really have a clear vision for, if I could answer these questions, I would be able to do these things, and that would have this impact on my business. You really need to try and establish that line of sight down to the data and the insights from that data to help drive that. Start with the low-hanging fruit first. Easy to collect, easy to compile, and the ones that drive most of the business value. So you don't necessarily need to boil the ocean out of the gate, and then add more over time as appropriate for your business. And then ultimately, the best way to drive value for the business from an attribution solution is move from kind of activity-based mindset to very much a value-based mindset, and looking for opportunities to maximize the performance of your marketing both across channels, but then also within the channels themselves. So before we go to questions, a quick plug for webinar number 3, Putting Attribution to Work, Clarity, Insights, and Action, January 28th, 12 p.m. Central. And you can we'll be sending out emails shortly with the registration and invitations to that email. Got a couple questions here, so let me take these and then we'll wrap it up. So the question is, in prioritizing what we need to track, it seems the highest priority would be events with direct financial impact that we pay for, like paid media, Google AdWords, and generates revenue. What other events that don't directly drive revenue should also be on the high priority list for tracking? Great question. You know, it depends on where you're at, right, in your current business. Frankly, if you're using a last click model, you will, and you believe that top of the funnel and mid funnel media is an important opportunity to kind of invest and optimize. You know, you definitely want to make sure you're bringing top of the funnel media into the equation. So display, video, maybe more generic keywords in your search, maybe loyalty and contents types of affiliate sites, etc. So there may be a huge opportunity for media that typically performs better in top of media and middle funnels. So definitely look at bringing that in. You know, there's efficiencies to be gained by bringing in your high cost media, definitely. Obviously, you know, if you can save 5% or 10% on your total display spend or on your total paid search, those may be your two biggest areas, so you can have significant impact there. One of the things about an advanced or data-driven attribution solution is you're going to discover areas that may be having a significant impact on performance, both positive and negative, but more positive, but isn't a costly channel, right? And those are always great things, because if there's an opportunity to expand or improve that area, the return is great. So maybe emails, even though, you know, it's fairly low cost channel from a media perspective, you know, maybe there's a different role for email through the customer journey that you can take advantage of. Maybe you're over mailing at the bottom of the funnel, and there's opportunities in earlier stages of the journey. There may be some opportunities around just even organic. And you know, your search platform should help you with this, but really possibilities of moving some of your paid search over to more of an organic approach, and seeing kind of that cannibalization, particularly at the bottom of the funnel. So definitely some insights there. I think, you know, it's hard to give you a specific answer, but definitely kind of go into it that lens of where's the biggest opportunity to be more efficient or impact kind of the areas of the funnel that I'm actually not currently addressing or have visibility into. One more question real quick, and then we'll wrap it. Question is around including kind of aggregate offline channels such as TV, print, and broadcast. Obviously, kind of opens up a whole new domain of complexity when you do that, because, you know, basically what I've presented here is a user level attribution approach. So you need user level data. There's kind of emerging capabilities and opportunities around set-top box data, and doing some user level identification, not directly, but applied kind of lookalike stuff. I think we'll see over time, as TV becomes more addressable and looks more like an internet-connected device than a standalone device on your wall. It'll act more like that. You know, so there's that opportunity. If it's pure aggregates, such as print or radio, and even some of the broadcast stuff, you can bring it into your model as a kind of a covariate variable, and include it in your model, and basically give you an understanding of what's the halo effect, the lift effect of that media overall. But obviously, you wouldn't have insights at the user level, at the campaign creative level. It'd be much more on an aggregate basis. So I think that's it. Once again, thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope you found the information of value and your time well spent. Once again, we'll get you guys out via email links to the recorded session, as well as the slides themselves. Thanks again, and we'll see everyone on January 28th.